The storm arrived long before the night did. It rolled across the hills like something alive, slow, deliberate, swallowing the last traces of daylight as thunder echoed through the valley. The villagers of Black Hollow had already shut their doors, barred their windows, and retreated into silence. No one stayed outside when the sky looked like this, and no one ever went near the castle. High above the village, carved into the jagged spine of the mountain, it stood, ancient, unmoving, watching. Its towers pierced the storm clouds, and its black stone walls seemed to drink in the lightning, refusing to reflect even a flicker of light. It had no name anymore, only whispers. They called it the Listening Castle. The sound of hooves broke the silence. A lone rider approached through the rain, armor glistening faintly beneath flashes of lightning, a dark cloak snapping violently in the wind. His name was Sir Aldrich, a knight of the royal guard, sent on orders he did not question. Not yet. His horse slowed as they reached the edge of the village. The animal snorted, uneasy, refusing to move further. Aldrich frowned. "Easy," he muttered, patting its neck, but even he could feel it now. Something in the air, not just the storm, something heavier, something watching. A faint light flickered ahead. One door in the village creaked open just enough to reveal an old woman, her face lined with age and something far deeper, fear. "You should not be here," she called out, her voice barely louder than the wind. Aldrich guided his horse closer, rain dripping from his helmet. "I have been sent to guard the castle," he said firmly. "Orders from the capital." The woman's eyes widened, not in surprise, but in dread. "No one guards that place," she whispered. "No one returns from it." Aldrich let out a quiet breath, almost amused. "Stories," he replied. "Every village has them." But the woman did not smile. Instead, she stepped out further into the rain, her frail hand gripping the door frame as if it were the only thing keeping her standing. "Listen to me," she said, her voice trembling. "The castle is not empty." Aldrich's expression hardened slightly. "And who lives there?" For a moment, the storm seemed to quiet. The woman leaned closer, her eyes locked onto his. "Not who," she said. "What remains?" A distant thunderclap shook the ground. Aldrich glanced up toward the mountain. The castle loomed above, barely visible through the sheets of rain, but he could feel it now, clearer than before. A pull, like something waiting. "The walls," the woman continued, almost choking on her own words. "They remember." Aldrich said nothing. "You will hear them," she whispered. "At first you will think it is the wind, or your own thoughts." Her grip tightened. "But when they'll start speaking clearly," she hesitated. "Do not answer." Silence stretched between them. Then Aldrich straightened in his saddle. "I appreciate your concern," he said calmly, "but I have my duty." The woman's face fell. "No," she said softly. "You have a choice." But Aldrich had already turned his horse toward the mountain path. The climb was steep. Mud and stone shifted beneath the horse's hooves as they ascended, lightning illuminating the path. In brief, violent flashes, the higher he went, the quieter the world became. No insects, no birds, no wind, only the distant echo of thunder and something else, something he could not quite hear. At last, the castle gates stood before him, massive, ancient, slightly ajar, as if expecting him. Aldrich dismounted slowly, his boots landing in shallow water. For a moment he simply stared at the entrance. Then, without hesitation, he pushed the gates open. They groaned in protest, the sound deep and unnatural, echoing far beyond what it should. Inside, darkness, thick, heavy, silent. Aldrich stepped forward. The moment he crossed the threshold, The gates slammed shut behind him. The sound echoed through the castle like a roar, and then silence returned. But this time it was not empty. Aldrich stood still, his hand slowly tightening around the hilt of his sword. Something had changed. The air felt different, closer, and somewhere, deep within the walls, something shifted. For a long moment, Sir Aldrich did not move. The echo of the slamming gates still lingered in the air, rolling through the vast stone halls like distant thunder. Then, slowly, even that faded. What remained was something far worse. Silence, not the peaceful kind, not the silence of night or sleep or stillness. This was hollow, as if the castle itself had been emptied of life long ago, and whatever replaced it had no need for sound. Aldrich turned. The gates behind him were sealed tight, not just closed, but unmoving. He pressed a hand against the cold iron. Nothing, no shift, no give. He frowned, then stepped back, his boots scraping softly against the stone floor. "Just the wind," he muttered under his breath. But even as he said it, he knew there was no wind here. He lifted the torch from the wall beside the entrance and struck it alight. The flame flickered weakly at first, as if struggling to exist in this place, before finally steadying into a dull, wavering glow. Light spilled into the corridor ahead, revealing dust. Thick layers of it, undisturbed, covering the floors, the walls, the tall stone pillars that stretched upward into darkness. No footprints, no signs of movement. Nothing had walked these halls in years, at least nothing human. Aldrich moved forward cautiously, the torchlight dancing across the walls. Tattered banners hung from above, their symbols long faded beyond recognition. Rusted suits of armor stood along the corridor, positioned like silent sentinels, watching, always watching. He paused beside one. Its helmet was tilted slightly downward, as if staring at the ground, or perhaps at him. A thin layer of dust coated its surface, untouched. Aldrich reached out, brushing his fingers lightly against the metal, cold, lifeless. He exhaled slowly and continued on. The deeper he walked, the more the castle revealed its emptiness. A grand dining hall appeared to his left, a long wooden table stretching into shadow. Plates still sat where they had been left, covered in dust, goblets untouched. A feast that had ended, without anyone leaving. Aldrich stepped inside. His boots echoed loudly now, the sound sharp and unnatural in the vast chamber. He scanned the room carefully. No bodies. No signs of struggle, just abandonment. He approached the table, running his fingers along its surface. The dust parted beneath his touch, leaving a clear trail, and that is when he noticed it. Another trail, faint, barely visible, but there. Aldrich leaned closer. It was not fresh, but it was different, a disturbance in the dust, not made by him. A thin line, stretching across the table, as if something had dragged itself slowly from one end to the other. He straightened immediately. His grip tightened on the torch. "Enough," he whispered to himself. "You are imagining things." But the words felt weak, unconvincing. He turned to leave the hall, and froze. From somewhere deep within the castle, a sound, so faint it almost did not exist. A breath, a whisper. Aldrich held still, his heart beginning to pound. "Hello." The word slipped from his mouth before he could stop it. The silence swallowed it whole. Nothing. He let out a slow breath, shaking his head. "Just the storm," he said again, louder this time. And then, "Traitor." The word brushed against his ear. So close. It felt as though someone had spoken directly behind him. Aldrich spun around, sword half drawn in an instant. "Show yourself." His voice echoed violently through the hall, upside walls, returning to him in distorted fragments. But there was no one there, only the table, the armor, the dust, and the silence. Aldrich stood frozen, his breath shallow now. He listened, strained, waited. Nothing came. Slowly, carefully, he lowered his sword. "This place is playing tricks," he muttered. But even as he said it, he could not ignore what he had heard. Not the sound, not the word. Traitor. It had not come from the air. It had not echoed through the hall. It had come from the walls. Aldrich turned his head slowly, staring at the cold stone beside him. For a brief, impossible moment, he thought he saw something, a faint mark, a scratch, like fingernails dragged across the surface. And then, silence again. Aldrich stepped back, his pulse racing now. The torchlight flickered violently, casting shifting shadows along the walls. For a moment, those shadows almost looked like shapes, like figures. Reaching, he clenched his jaw. "No," he said firmly. "Enough of this." He turned and walked out of the hall, faster this time. Behind him, the dust on the table shifted slightly, as if something unseen had just moved across it, and deep within the stone, something listened. Sir Aldrich did not stop walking, not until the dining hall was far behind him, swallowed again by darkness and silence. But the silence no longer felt empty. Now it felt aware. His footsteps echoed faster through the narrow corridor, the torchlight trembling in his hand. He told himself it was nothing, just an old castle, abandoned, filled with echoes and wind, trapped in stone. But there was no wind, and echoes did not whisper words. Traitor, the memory of it lingered, replaying in his mind with unnatural clarity. Not imagined, not mistaken. It had been real. Aldrich slowed, forced himself to breathe. "You are a knight," he muttered, "not a frightened child." His voice sounded fissures, strange here, thinner, as if the walls were swallowing parts of it. The corridor opened into a wider passage, lined with tall, narrow windows. Rain lashed against the outside, streaking the glass in frantic patterns. Lightning flashed, illuminating the hall in brief, violent bursts. In those flashes, the shadows moved. Aldrich stopped. His eyes scanned the walls carefully. Stone, cracked, aged, and then marks. He stepped closer. The torchlight revealed them slowly, uneven scratches carved deep into the stone, not symbols, not writing, desperation. Jagged lines overlapping, crossing each other, as if someone had clawed at the walls with bare hands, over and over, trying to get out. Aldrich raised his hand, placing it against the marks. The stone was cold, but beneath that cold, there was something else, a faint vibration, so subtle he almost pulled away before realizing it. It was not the storm, it was not the castle shifting. It was movement. Aldrich froze, his breath caught in his throat. Slowly, he leaned closer, closer to the wall, listening. At first, nothing, just the distant sound of rain. Then, a murmur, so soft, so faint, it felt like a thought rather than a sound. Still here, Aldrich jerked back instantly, his heart slamming against his chest. No, the word escaped him, sharp and quick. No, that is not possible. He stepped away from the wall, shaking his head, gripping his sword tighter now. "This place is playing tricks," he said again, but his voice was weaker this time, less certain. "So many years." The whisper came again, longer now, clearer. Aldrich turned slowly, not toward the corridor, not toward the windows, toward the wall. His eyes locked onto the stone. The scratches, the cracks between the blocks, and then, for just a second, something moved beneath the surface. A shape, a distortion, as if the stone itself had breathed. Aldrich stumbled back, nearly dropping the torch. "What are you?" he demanded, his voice rising despite himself. Silence answered, but only for a moment. "He locked us in." The voice was no longer distant. It was closer now, not behind him, not ahead of him, all around him. Aldrich spun, searching, his sword fully drawn now. "Show yourself." Nothing. Only the flickering torchlight, the rain against the glass, the endless suffocating stone. And then, Aldrich. The world seemed to stop. The name echoed through him. Not loud, not shouted, whispered, right beside his ear. Aldrich froze, completely, every muscle in his body locked. Slowly, terrifyingly, slowly, he turned his head. There was no one there. But the air felt different, closer, warmer, as if something unseen stood just inches away from him, watching. "You hear us?" Aldrich's breath trembled now. "How do you know my name?" he whispered. The torch flickered violently. The shadows twisted along the walls, stretching unnaturally. "You are like him." The whisper shifted, not pleading, not weak. Accusing. "You came back." Aldrich shook his head, stepping back again. "I do not know what you are," he said, his voice unsteady. "But I'm not." The torch went out. Darkness swallowed everything. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. No light, no sound, no world. And then the whispers returned. Not one, not two, dozens. "Aldrich, Aldrich, Aldrich," from every direction. From the walls, from the floor, from the very air itself. Aldrich's grip tightened blindly around his sword as panic finally broke through. "Stop!" The word tore from his throat, echoing, shattering the silence. And just as suddenly as they had begun, the whispers stopped. The torch reignited. Light flooded back into the corridor. The walls were still, silent, unmoving, as if nothing had happened. Aldrich stood alone, breathing heavily, sweat cold against his skin. But now, he knew, this castle was not empty, and whatever lived within its walls knew exactly who he was. The silence that followed was worse than the whispers. Sir Aldrich stood frozen in the corridor, the torch trembling in his hand, its flame now burning steady, as if nothing had happened. But everything had changed. He could still feel it, that presence, not just around him, watching him. Slowly, he lowered his sword. His breath was uneven now, controlled only by force. Every instinct screamed at him to leave, to run back to the gates, to abandon whatever duty had brought him here. But he did not move, because something deeper told him the truth. There was nowhere to run. Aldrich turned, scanning the corridor again. The scratch marks were still there. The windows still rattled under the storm. The walls silent, too silent. He took a step forward, then another. Each footstep echoed differently now, not hollow, not distant, but close, as if the sound did not travel away from him, but returned immediately. He stopped, listened. Footsteps behind him. Aldrich spun instantly, sword raised. Nothing, only the empty corridor stretching into darkness. His grip tightened. He waited, counted his breaths. Then he stepped forward again. Step, and behind him, step. Aldrich turned sharply. Nothing. The silence pressed in around him, thick and suffocating. "No more games," he said, his voice low, steady, forced. He began walking again, faster now. Step, step, step. Behind him, step, step. This time, He did not turn immediately. His jaw clenched. His eyes fixed forward. "Do not turn." The whisper brushed against his ear, soft, urgent. Aldrich froze. "He sees when you turn." His breath caught, slowly, against every instinct screaming inside him. He kept his eyes forward. The footsteps behind him stopped. Silence. Aldrich swallowed hard. Then, inch by inch, he turned. The corridor was empty. But something had changed. The armor, the suits of armor that lined the walls, were no longer facing forward, that they were turned, all of them, facing him. Aldrich's chest tightened. That is not possible. Their hollow helmets stared directly at him now, dark and empty, watching. He took a slow step back. The torchlight flickered. For a moment, just a moment, he thought he saw something inside one of the helmets. Movement. Aldrich raised his sword. "Who is there?" Silence answered. Then, a faint metallic creak. One of the armored figures shifted, just slightly, but enough. Aldrich lunged forward, grabbing the nearest suit and yanking it violently. It crashed to the ground in a burst of dust and rust. Lifeless, empty. He stepped back, breathing hard. Just metal," he muttered. "Just empty." Clang. Behind him, Aldrich spun. Another suit of armor, its head, now tilted, looking directly at him. The torch flickered violently again. The shadows stretched and twisted along the walls, wrapping around the figures like living things. "He walks again." The whisper came from everywhere. "He watches." Aldrich backed away slowly, his pulse racing now beyond control. "Who?" he shouted. "Who watches?" The walls answered, not with words, but with sound. A deep, low rumble. The stone beneath his feet trembled. Aldrich staggered slightly, catching himself against the wall, and then he felt it. Movement. The wall, beneath his hand, shifting, not collapsing, not cracking, sliding. He jerked his hand away as the stone blocks moved slowly, silently, rearranging themselves. The corridor was changing. Aldrich turned. The path he had come from, gone. Replaced by a solid wall of stone. "No," he whispered. The torchlight shook as his hand trembled. The castle had just sealed him inside. "You should not have come." The whisper was no longer distant, no longer scattered. It was right behind him. Aldrich turned, and for the briefest second, he saw it. A figure, tall, still, standing at the far end of the corridor, watching. The torch flickered, and it was gone. Aldrich stood frozen, heart pounding, mind racing, because now he understood. This was not just a haunted place. This was something else, something that moved, watched, changed, and it had begun to close around him. Sir Aldrich did not move, not at first. The corridor had changed. No, not changed. It had closed. Where there had once been a path, there was now only solid stone, seamless, unbroken, as if it had always been there. The castle had erased his way back. Aldrich's breath came slow and heavy, each inhale sharper than the last. "This is not real," he whispered. But his voice no longer believed it. The torch trembled in his hand, casting restless shadows along the walls. Every flicker seemed to stretch the darkness further, warping the edges of the corridor into something uncertain, alive. He forced himself to think. Panic would get him killed, or worse. The figure he had seen, tall, unmoving, watching, still burned in his mind. It had not charged him, had not spoken. It had simply been there, waiting. Aldrich tightened his grip on his sword. "Then I move forward," he said under his breath. No more standing still. The only path left was ahead. He stepped carefully, each movement measured, his senses straining against the oppressive silence. The whispers had faded for now, but that made it worse. It felt like Becastle was listening, waiting for him to make a mistake. The corridor narrowed as he moved deeper, the air growing colder with every step. The torchlight dimmed slightly, as though the darkness itself resisted it. Then, a sound, a faint scrape. Aldrich froze. It had not come from behind him, or ahead, from beside him. He turned slowly toward the wall. Another scrape, closer this time. Aldrich stepped toward it, lowering the torch. The light revealed a section of stone, slightly different from the rest. The cracks were deeper here, uneven, disturbed. He reached out cautiously, pressing his hand against it. The stone shifted. A low grinding sound echoed. As the block moved inward, just slightly, enough to reveal darkness behind it. A hidden passage. Aldrich hesitated. Every instinct told him to walk away, but there was nowhere else to go. He pushed the stone further. The opening widened with a heavy, reluctant groan, releasing a breath of air so cold it felt like it had been trapped for centuries, and with it, a smell, rot, old, thick, unmistakable. Aldrich's jaw tightened. "Gods," he muttered. He raised the torch and stepped inside. The passage was narrow, barely wide enough for him to move through. The walls pressed close on either side, rough and uneven, as if they had not been built, but carved. The air grew heavier with every step, the smell stronger. Then the floor changed. Aldrich looked down. His boot had struck something, not stone, bone. He stepped back instantly, lowering the torch. The light revealed it slowly, a human skeleton, half buried in the dust. Its fingers were stretched forward, clawing at the ground, frozen in a final, desperate attempt to move, to escape. Aldrich swallowed hard, and then he saw the wall. Deep scratches. Far worse than before. These were not random. These were frantic, repeated, endless. Whoever had died here had not gone quietly. Aldrich took a slow step forward, then another. More bones appeared. Another skeleton, then another. Some collapsed where they lay, others, still reaching, toward the passage, toward the exit. Aldrich's breathing grew shallow. "They were trying to get out," he whispered. The torch flickered violently, and then a sound, not a whisper, a breath. Right in front of him, Aldrich froze. The torchlight trembled. The skeleton ahead of him moved, just slightly. Its fingers twitched against the stone. Aldrich stumbled back, his heart slamming violently in his chest. "No, no, that is not." Crack. The sound echoed sharply through the narrow passage. The skeleton's hand shifted again, dragging, slowly, toward him. Aldrich raised his sword, panic finally breaking through. "Stay back." The torch flickered wildly, shadows twisting across the walls, and for a brief, horrifying moment, the bones were not alone. Shapes moved along the stone, figures, pressing from within. "We tried to leave." The voice came from everywhere. He sealed us in. The air grew colder, heavier. No light, no air, no escape. Aldrich backed away, step by step, his boots scraping over bone. "This is not real," he whispered again. But the words felt empty now, because he could see it. Feel it. This was not just a prison. It was a tomb, and whatever had died here had never truly left. The torch dimmed suddenly, and in that fading light, the passage behind him sealed shut. The passage was sealed. Sir Aldrich stood frozen, staring at the solid wall where the entrance had once been. No crack, no seam, no sign it had ever opened. Only stone, unmoving, unforgiving. His chest rose and fell rapidly. each breath sharper than the last. The air here felt thinner now, heavier, as if the space itself were closing in around him. Behind him, the bones, the faint dragging sound, the whispers. No escape. Aldrich clenched his jaw and forced himself to turn back. Running blindly would only make it worse. He needed to understand. The torchlight flickered weakly as he stepped deeper into the passage. The skeleton that had moved advanced still again, its hand frozen mid-reach as if nothing had happened. But Aldrich knew better. They were not at rest. The walls closed tighter as he moved forward, narrowing until his shoulders nearly brushed both sides. The scratches grew denser here, layered over one another, carved deep into the stone until parts of the wall looked shredded, not by tools, by hands. And then the passage opened. Aldrich stepped into a small chamber, low ceiling, no windows, the air thick with decay. The torchlight revealed it slowly. Chains, dozens of them, bolted into the walls, rusted, broken, some still hanging loose, swaying slightly, as if disturbed moments ago. And beneath them, more remains, not scattered like before. These were different, arranged. Skeletons slumped against the walls, wrists still locked in iron shackles, skulls tilted downward, mouths open in silent screams that had never ended. Aldrich felt his stomach tighten. They were prisoners, he whispered. No, the voice came softly, close, clear. We were knights. Aldrich's head snapped up. Who said that? Silence. But the air shifted. We served him. The whisper moved along the walls, passing from one side of the chamber to the other, like a breath through cracks in stone. We trusted him. Aldrich stepped forward slowly, his eyes scanning the room. Who? He demanded. Who did this to you? The chains rattled faintly. Our Lord. Aldrich's grip tightened on the torch. He called us brothers. The temperature dropped sharply. The flame shrank, then sealed us in. Aldrich's pulse quickened. No, why? For a moment, silence. Then, fear. The word echoed deeper than the others. Heavier. He feared we would betray him. Aldrich frowned. That makes no sense. So he betrayed us first. The torch flickered violently, and then Aldrich saw it. At the far end of the chamber, something different. Not bone, not chain, cloth. He moved toward it cautiously, each step slow, measured. Figure lay slumped against the wall, more intact than the others. Rusted armor still clung to its frame, its helmet resting beside it, and in its skeletal hands, a book. Aldrich knelt slowly, his breath unsteady. The cover was worn, cracked with age. He hesitated only a moment before pulling it free. The moment he touched it, the whispers stopped completely. The silence that followed was absolute. Aldrich opened the book. The pages were brittle but legible, ink faded but not gone. A journal. He began to read. Day 3. We are still loyal. This must be a misunderstanding. The Lord will return. Aldrich turned the page. Day 7. The doors have not opened. Some of the men are beginning to panic. Another page. Day 12. We have no food left. The air grows thin. They are scratching at the walls now, trying to find a way out. Aldrich's hands tightened. Another page. The writing had changed. Shaking, uneven. Day. I do not know anymore. He lied to us. He sealed us in. We can hear him above, walking freely, while we rot. Aldrich swallowed hard. Final page. The ink was smeared. Desperate. If anyone finds this, do not trust the walls. They remember. They keep us here. They will not let us leave. Aldrich's breath slowed. Then, at the very bottom, one final line. carved deeper than the rest. He will come back. The torch flickered. And so will you, the whisper returned. Aldrich froze. The journal slipped slightly in his hand. You wear his armor. Aldrich's eyes widened. You walk his halls. The air grew heavier, older. You finish what he started. No, Aldrich said firmly, standing up. I'm not him. The chains rattled violently. The skeletons shifted. All of you say that. The chamber darkened. Before the walls take you, Aldrich stepped back, his pulse racing again. The torch dimmed, and the shadows along the walls began to move, not like before, closer, reaching. The shadows moved, not flickering, not shifting with the torchlight, moving. Sir Aldrich stepped back, his grip tightening around both sword and flame, as the walls around him seemed to pulse with a slow, unnatural rhythm, like breathing. Stay, the whisper came from his left, soft, almost gentle. Do not listen. Another voice answered from the right, sharper, urgent. Aldrich's eyes darted between the walls. Two voices. Different. He can help us. He will join us. The air thickened. The chamber seemed smaller now, the stone pressing inward, as if the castle itself had drawn closer to hear him. Enough! Aldrich shouted, his voice cracking through the confined space. What do you want from me? Silence. Then choice. A word echoed slowly, as though it had to push through layers of stone to reach him. Stay. Leave. Aldrich shook his head. There is no leaving, he said. You seal the passage. The chains rattled again, not violently this time, almost thoughtfully. We did not. A pause. He did. Aldrich's jaw tightened. The Lord, he said, the one who betrayed you. Yes and no. The voices overlapped now, conflicting, unstable. He built the walls, but we became them. Aldrich froze. What does that mean? He demanded. The torch flickered violently. We are inside. We are the stone. We are still here. Aldrich took a slow step back, his breath growing shallow again. That is impossible. The walls pulsed. Closer this time. Stronger. Touch it. The gentle voice. Do not. The urgent one cut in immediately. It will take you. Aldrich hesitated. His hand hovered near the wall. Feel us. Run. The voices clashed again, overlapping, rising in intensity. We are cold. We are hungry. We are waiting. Stop, Aldrich roared. The chamber fell silent. His breathing filled the space now, loud and uneven. The torch crackled softly. Then, slowly, carefully, Aldrich reached out. His fingers touched the stone, and everything changed. The cold vanished, replaced by something else. Pressure, movement. Beneath his hand, the wall shifted, not outward, not away, inward, like flesh. Aldrich recoiled instantly, stumbling back. No, but it was too late. The whispers surged, not scattered, not distant, focused. He feels us. He hears us. He belongs here. Aldrich shook his head violently. No, I do not belong here. The floor trembled. The chains snapped taut against the walls. You came. You stayed. You listened. The voices grew louder, more unified now. Less divided. That is how it begins. Aldrich backed toward the center of the chamber, his sword raised, his eyes wild. I am leaving, he said. I do not care what this place is. I am leaving. The walls answered, not with words, but with movement. The stone shifted again. The chamber changed. The opening he had entered from, gone, sealed, replaced by smooth, unbroken wall. No, Aldrich whispered. A new sound filled the chamber, a slow, wet, dragging noise. Aldrich turned. One of the skeletons, still chained to the wall, its head lifted, just slightly. Its jaw creaked open. Too late, the voice came from it, not from the walls, from the bones. Aldrich staggered back, horror flooding his face. You stayed too long. Another skeleton shifted. Then another. Chains rattled as they moved, their empty eye sockets turning toward him. We tried to leave. We tried to fight. Now we are part of it. The walls pulsed again, stronger, closer, and now the voices merged into one, low, heavy. So are you. Aldrich raised his sword, shouting in defiance. But the sound never finished, because the wall behind him moved, not slowly, not subtly. It lunged. Aldrich felt it before he saw it, the stone surging forward, reaching, grabbing. He twisted away just in time, the surface brushing against his armor with a sickening, unnatural softness. Not stone, something else. Aldrich stumbled forward, breathing hard, his heart racing uncontrollably. This was no longer a haunted place. This was a living prison, and it had started to close in. Sir Aldrich ran, not with strategy, not with control, with instinct. The moment the wall had lunged toward him, something inside him broke, the last fragile layer of reason, of discipline, of control. This was no place meant for the living. His boots slammed against the stone as he forced his way forward, the chamber twisting behind him, reshaping, closing, breathing like a beast that had finally decided to feed. Run! The whisper followed him. It does not matter, another voice answered. It always ends the same. Aldrich did not look back. He could not. The passage ahead narrowed, then widened again, as if guiding him or hurting him. The torchlight flickered violently, barely holding against the darkness that pressed in from every side. Then he saw it, an opening, wider than the others, darker, deeper. Aldrich stumbled into it without hesitation, and immediately he stopped. The air changed, colder than before, heavier, still, no whispers. For the first time since entering the castle, there was silence. Aldrich's chest rose and fell sharply as he lifted the torch higher. The light spread slowly into the space and revealed the walls, but not as they had been before. These were not smooth, not solid. They were shaped. Aldrich stepped forward slowly, his breath catching in his throat as the torchlight revealed the truth, piece by piece. Faces, dozens of them, pressed into the stone, frozen, mouths open, eyes hollow. Expressions twisted in silent agony. They were not carved. They were part of the wall. Aldrich's hand trembled as he raised the torch closer. The detail was impossible. Every line, every crack, every strained expression, real. They are inside, he whispered. The words barely left his mouth because, as he stared, one of the faces moved just slightly. The stone shifted around its mouth, and then it inhaled. Aldrich staggered back. No, the silence shattered. We are the walls. The voice came from the face. Its lips did not move. The sound was unmistakable. We are the prison. Another face shifted, then another. The chamber came alive. We are still here. Aldrich's breathing turned ragged. His eyes darted wildly across the walls as more faces began to move, slowly, painfully, as if the stone itself resisted them. You see us now. You understand. No, Aldrich shouted. This is not real. This cannot be real. The torch flickered violently. The faces smiled, not with relief, with something darker. We said that too. The ground beneath him pulsed. Aldrich stumbled, nearly falling as the chamber seemed to contract slightly, the walls inching closer. We fought, we screamed, we begged. The voices overlapped, rising in intensity, filling the chamber with a chorus of endless suffering. But the walls do not forget, they do not forgive. They do not let go. Aldrich backed toward the center of the chamber, turning in slow circles, his sword useless now, his mind racing beyond control. "This was the Lord's doing," he said desperately. "He trapped you here. I did not. I am not." He said that too. The words cut through him. Aldrich froze. The last one. The torchlight dimmed slightly. He wore the same armor. Aldrich's breath caught. He spoke the same words. The chamber grew colder, and he became one of us. Aldrich's grip on the torch faltered. No. The walls pulsed again. Stronger. Closer. It does not matter who you were, only where you stand. Aldrich looked around. The realization hit him like a blade. The chamber had no exit, no passage, no door, only walls. And they were closing. This is the heart. This is where it ends. The faces leaned outward slightly, the stone stretching around them, reaching, yearning. Or where it begins. Aldrich backed up until he could move no further. The wall pressed cold against his back. The torch flickered wildly in his shaking hand. And then one face, directly in front of him, moved more than the others. Its head turned, slowly, deliberately, its hollow eyes locking onto his. Aldrich. The voice was different, deeper, familiar. Aldrich's breath stopped, because for a moment, just a moment, he recognized it. Sir Aldrich could not breathe, not from fear alone, but because the air itself had begun to thin. The chamber pressed inward, slowly, deliberately, the walls inching closer with every passing second. The faces embedded in the stone stretched toward him, their hollow expressions no longer frozen in pain, but in anticipation. Aldrich. The voice came again. That same voice, closer now, clearer. Aldrich stared at the face before him, his vision trembling as the torchlight flickered wildly. "I know that voice," he whispered. The face leaned forward, not breaking free of the stone, but pushing against it. "You should." Aldrich's heart pounded. "You have heard it before." Memories flickered in his mind. Fragments, broken pieces, orders given. Voices in the royal court. Armor just like his. No. Aldrich shook his head violently. No, that is not possible. The chamber tightened. Walls groaned softly, like something ancient awakening fully at last. "We all forget." The voice deepened. "Before we remember." Aldrich stumbled backward, but there was nowhere left to go. The wall pressed firmly against his back now, cold, unyielding. "Stay away from me," he shouted, raising his sword toward the face. The chamber answered, not with fear, with laughter, low, broken, endless. "You still think this is happening to you, but it is not." The voices merged again, filling the chamber from every direction. You walked in, you listened, you touched the walls. Aldrich's breath grew ragged. His grip on the sword faltered. "You chose this?" "No," he shouted. "I did not choose this." The torch dimmed. The shadows climbed higher along the walls, swallowing the edges of the chamber. "Then why did not you leave?" Aldrich froze. The question echoed, not as an accusation, but as something worse, a truth. The memory surfaced. The old woman, her warning, "Do not answer." Aldrich's chest tightened. "You heard us, and you stayed." The voice softened, almost calm. Just like the rest, the walls pulsed again, stronger, closer. Aldrich could feel it now, not just against his back. Around him, the stone was not just closing in, it was reaching. The surface shifted, softening slightly as it pressed against his armor, his shoulders, testing. We do not want freedom. The voice dropped to a whisper. We want release. Aldrich's eyes widened. What does that mean? The chamber answered as one. We cannot leave, but you can stay. The meaning hit him instantly. No, his voice broke. No, I am not staying here. The faces twisted. Smiling, you misunderstand. The wall behind him moved, not pushing, pulling. Aldrich gasped as the stone seemed to grip his armor, dragging him backward slightly. This is impossible. You will not stay, the voice continued. You will become. Aldrich struggled, pushing forward, but the ground beneath him shifted, unsteady, resisting his movement. Part of us. The chamber darkened further. Just like him, the voice deepened again. Familiar, terrifying. Aldrich's head snapped toward the face. Who are you? He demanded. The torch flickered violently. For a moment, the features of the face changed. Not fully, not clearly, but enough. Aldrich staggered, because what he saw looked like him. No, you were sent here. The voice continued, just like we were. The walls tightened, to guard, to serve, to obey. Aldrich's strength faltered until the walls chose you. The stone pulled harder now, his back sinking slightly into its surface, as if it were no longer solid. Stop, he shouted, struggling violently. It has already begun. The cold spread through his armor, through his skin. You feel it. Aldrich froze, because he did. A numbness, spreading, the silence, the stillness, the stone, the chamber pulsed one final time, and then everything stopped. The movement, the whispers, the pressure, silence. Aldrich stood there, trembling, half embedded against the wall, his breath shallow, his mind racing, waiting for whatever came next. Silence. Not the hollow silence Aldrich had felt before, not the suffocating stillness of the castle's halls. This was something deeper, final. Sir Aldrich could no longer feel his hands, or his feet, or the weight of the sword that had once been clenched tightly in his grip. It had fallen, he did not remember when. The torch, gone, darkness surrounded him, but somehow he could still see. Not with his eyes, something else. Aldrich tried to move. Nothing happened. No pain, no resistance, just stillness. Do not fight it. The voice came softly, not from the walls, not from the chamber, from within. Aldrich's thoughts slowed. What is happening to me? He whispered. You are becoming. The answer came gently. What we are. Images flooded his mind, not memories, experiences. The nights, the chains, the darkness, the slow realization that no one was coming, the scratching, the screaming, the moment air ran out. Aldrich gasped, but no breath came. We remember everything. The voices surrounded him again, but now they were not distant. They were part of him. And now so do you. Aldrich's awareness expanded. He could feel the chamber, the walls, every crack in the stone, every bone looked still embedded within it, every voice. You see it now? The truth settled in. This was never just a prison. It was something else, a collector, a keeper, a thing that did not just trap its victims, but absorbed them, made them part of itself. We do not die. We remain. Aldrich tried to resist, tried to hold on to something, anything, his name, his purpose. I am Sir Aldrich, he whispered weakly. The voices answered. You were. The word echoed slowly. Now you are more. Aldrich felt the last piece of himself slipping, not torn away, blended, merged, until there was no edge between him and the stone, no boundary, no separation. And then, nothing. The storm outside faded. The chamber stilled. The castle fell silent once more. As if it had gone back to sleep, morning light touched the mountain again, soft, golden. The storm had passed. Below, in the village of Black Hollow, doors creaked open cautiously. People stepped outside, their eyes drawn upward toward the castle, watching, waiting. The old woman stood at the edge of the path, silent, still. She said nothing, because she already knew. At Castle, the gates stood as they always had, massive, ancient, slightly open, as if nothing had happened, as if nothing ever did. Footsteps approached. Another rider, another knight, armor gleaming in the morning light, cloak swaying gently in the breeze. Young, unaware, he stopped at the gates, looking up at the towering structure. Strange place, he muttered. Behind him, the old woman's voice called out, "Do not go inside." The knight turned slightly. "Orders," he replied simply. She stepped forward, her eyes filled with something deeper than fear. "The walls remember," she said. The knight frowned. "Stories," he replied, and then he stepped forward, through the gates. They closed behind him. Slowly, he walked into the darkness. The silence greeted him, empty, still, until, from deep within the stone, a whisper, faint, fragile, "Leave." The knight froze. Before it is too late, the voice trembled, unfamiliar, and yet desperate, because somewhere, buried deep within the walls, Sir Aldrich was still there, still aware, still trying. "Do not listen to them," the whisper echoed one last time. And then other voices rose, stronger, darker, drowning his out. "Stay, listen, join us." The castle breathed. The cycle began again.